average of more than 5 years. The turnover cannot exceed in any of the financial years for more than 25 crores. Right? It needs to create a product or a process or a service which is commercial and can be commercialized and is driven out of IT or intellectual property. And you need something called a certification that you satisfied all of these from something which is newly created called an Inter-Ministerial Board of Certification. Is that okay? What is an Inter-Ministerial Board of Certification going to do? So they say that DIPP, which is the Department of Industrial Policies and Promotion, will give out an application to these startups. If you've qualified for the first round of eligibility conditions, then you have to approach the DIPP with an application form, and that application form needs to be supported by one of these entities. Is that okay? What are these? So either there needs to be a recommendation letter that yes, your product is innovative in nature, satisfied the existing conditions, which needs to be either from a recognized postgraduate institute in India, like the IIMs of the world, or there needs to be a letter of support from business incubator, which is either funded by the government or the state government. Again, there will be a letter of incubation, letter of recommendation from the central government, recognized business incubators. So either a letter of recommendation from an incubator, it could be either central or the state funded, or from a postgraduate college, or there has to be a letter of funding from an incubation, angel fund, private equity, accelerator, angel network, which is registered with SEBI, offering more than 20% in equity, which means what? One of these seed funding rounds need to have happened in your company, and I'll explain what seed funding also is going to be. One of these seed funding rounds must have happened, and more than 20% of the equity needs to have been taken up by either an angel investor or an angel network entity or a private equity or an incubator itself. By the way, how many of us understand, before I proceed, how many of us understand the startup ecosystem, what an incubator is, what an accelerator is, what is seed funding? Wow, so I can put myself to rest by asking you all the questions and you'll answer it for the rest of the audience. Okay, excellent. So one is the startup, which is the company, which is the center of focus for everything, right? What is an incubator? If somebody raise a hand. So if you could tell us what an incubator is.
Organization which provides the support systems and grooms the entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So there's one black box in which a novice gentleman will walk in with a startup idea and will walk out a little more professional in nature. So this incubator, like when a newborn baby is born, a new baby is born, you put him into something called a safe, secure box, and for some time before he's moved or brought into the actual world as well. So in incubators, technically, that kind of a box which will mentor you, give you some of the services, support ideas, internet facilities, administrative functions. Basically what happens is, if today I have to walk in and say that I have an innovative idea, I want to now start up and reach out to people and make it a product, I don't have the money to do it, very frankly. If I don't have the money, I don't have the wherewithal, if I don't have the understanding of how to run a business, and I'm just out of college, what do? I need some support system, right? So these incubators are... Yeah, exactly. So then they will help you survive in your first few years when you don't have money, yet you have something which you think is very promising and will become likes of the Flipkarts and the Zomatos and the Facebooks or the WhatsApps or the mobiles of the world, right? So an incubator will give you lots of facilities, like what? They'll let you give you a space for office working. Is that okay? Because I'm just an individual, I may not have an office space, so they'll give you an office space to work. Technically a desk, or let's say 2 desks to be able to work. They'll give you an internet facility to be able to do your R&D services as well. They'll ensure that they take care of your administrative functions, which means all your registration requirements, your tax filings, your accounting, your books of accounts maintenance, your financial maintenance. They'll also probably give you a mentor who's going to oversee and ensure that all your ideas are being actually channelized into a particular professional or a commercial conduit, okay? And sometimes they also take up some equity stake into the company, that in case if this baby grows up to become a huge superstar, then I also am able to encash out of the benefits. It is not always necessary that incubators offer all of these services, but these are the wide range of services that an incubator can offer. Is that okay? Most of these IITs and the IIMs have their own incubators. A lot of private institutions, universities also have their incubators. The government under the Department of Science and Technology, Biotechnology has also set up incubators. There are specific incubators for an industry, for a particular sector in a geography. So incubators are all across the country now, helping these startups, the new age entrepreneurs, to be able to survive in the first few years of the business when they don't know where to go, what to do with the idea that has come to them. Is that okay? So now, as professionals, of course, we can get ourselves tied to these incubators as well. But I'll park that, our role, I'll park it to the last. Otherwise, I'll see people walking out immediately after they've got the ideas. So I want you all to retain and remain till the. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. First, are these incubators necessarily government supported or department sponsored from the government? And number two, are there confidentiality clauses around, say, if somebody wants an idea and they don't want to
Sure. So the first question was whether it needs to be necessarily a government aided or a college aided or a university aided incubator. The answer is no. If you have thousands of square feet of area which you think you want to dedicate to, or let's say a space which you want to dedicate to incubate to startups, you could yourself also start an incubator. Is that okay? So it can be a private incubator as well. However, if you want to get attached to the DIPP, which is the Department of Industrial Policies and Promotions, to be able to get more startups come to you and to be able to give out more recommendations or get a little more for your region or sector specific startups to know that you also incubate, then of course you can have yourself mapped with DIPP. But short answer is that yes, you can have a private incubator as well. The second question was on the confidentiality clause. Again, there are these departments of science and technology and biotechnologies who have their incubators in place. They have made it public what are their qualification criteria for an incubator to come in and incubate with them basically. So you could also create your own criteria for admission. It's basically like running a college or a school. You will have your own qualification criteria for an incubation, for an incubatee or a prospective incubatee to come and incubate with you. So let's say if I say I have an idea of, like I said, I'll take people to 2 nights in vacation at Moon. So then, it will be too bizarre and you will throw me out and not want to incubate me. So then you can have your qualification criteria as to what sort of incubatees you want, which sector they want to be working in, how long will they stay with you, what are the milestones that they need to achieve, whether you're going to be making an equity investment or not. So that framework of running an incubator can be set by me. It need not be guided by a policy or by a department of the government, which I need to mandatorily follow. But however, all these MOUs are publicly available for you to at least get a sense on, if you are to start an incubator, what all probably you need to do as well. Is that okay?
All these grassroots innovators, which are covered under National Innovation Foundation, they are directly qualified this kind of a scheme.
So are you saying all these startups which are in the technology side qualify for these schemes?
Yeah, means any kind of grassroots innovation, which is funded by IIM, Nan करके funded scheme.
Yeah, so they give out grants as
Yeah.
well, right?
So this kind of people are directly eligible under this second condition.
Absolutely. So if you are saying, you mean the recommendation from the postgraduate company. So they have analyzed that the idea that the person has or the startup fellow has is an innovative idea. And typically these colleges and universities hold a challenge or a program where they would invite a lot of innovative ideas to come, out of which 5 of them will get funded from the college itself as grants. Let's say a 10 lakh is being given out. It's called soft funding basically. A 5 lakh or a 10 lakh is given out for them to be able to do more R&D in that innovative idea and develop something called a minimum viable product. So if that college is satisfied that the particular idea can become a minimum viable product as well, in that case, yes, they satisfy the first condition, where they will simply get a recommendation letter from their postgraduate college to say that yes, the idea is innovative and can be commercialized innovative.
And in case some innovator innovate something prior to this initialization of this scheme, and he is already running a private limited company, will he qualify this startup or he is
So the
required?
answers are coming out. Though no is the answer that is coming out. That yes, this is a huge question mark currently on what happens to the existing
Government
startups.
Object is very clear. Promote innovation.
Is correct.
Is it your fault that you have innovated prior to initialization?
So none of this is my point. I'm just stating facts. You are going to be culling out whatever is necessary. But yes, currently there is a huge question mark on what happens to the existing companies who have innovated and who have gone a little mile as a startup, will they not qualify? Unfortunately, currently the language that looks like, and I will be dealing with all of this in the couple of next slides that come by as well, that there is nothing really spoken about the existing startups. Is that okay? So what will happen to them? There is nothing being spoken about. Henceforth, for the ones that are now thinking of an idea, it's a push for them certainly. What happens to the existing ones? The government has not really come out with a clarification on that as well. Yes, yes.
Says that yes, you are eligible,
Absolutely.
but you are not eligible for income tax. For
So,
income tax,
yes.
the condition is that you have to be incorporated after first April 16. But for DAPP, yes, you are eligible.
Wow, so the crowd is already very homeworked with that stuff. Yes, you are correct. This 30th March 2016 and DIPP FAQs came out, which said that even an existing business, if I had to come out with these recommendation letters, etc., they will entertain and qualify to be a startup. But again, I was going to any which you mentioned about the tax exemptions that are applicable. The Finance Bill 2016, now just 2 days back, has become an act as well. It says that it needs to be incorporated from 1st April 2016 for the 5-year vintage or for up to 5 years qualification criteria to be satisfied. So yes, it's a little bit of a dampener that under the tax exemptions for 3-year holiday that we're talking about from profits being subject to income tax, that will only be applicable if you are an entity which has been established after 1st April 2016. But only the FAQs for the time being say that even an existing business can start and make an application under DIPP. But there's nothing really from the language that it seems to suggest that that an existing business can make an application. Fortunately for people, you can do a trial and error with DIPP as well, because DIPP only penalizes if you're being very flimsy and whimsical with them. So if you come up with an idea which is bizarre and cannot be commercialized and you don't have these kind of recommendation letters, only then will they penalize you. Otherwise, I'm assuming that there is no penal action being put in. So we'll have to do a trial and error to be able to see whether an existing business will qualify to be a startup or not. But currently there is ambiguity on that section as of now. Okay, so there needs to be you need to be either funded by any of these entities, or you need to have a letter of support or a letter of recommendation from the incubators of the state or the central government supported incubators, or you need to have a letter of funding from Government of India or any of the state governments. This is very aggressive. I mean, the government's really thinking that people will actually get a letter of funding from the Government of India or the state government. But anyway, or a patent has been filed and published by the Indian Patent Office in areas affiliated with the nature of the business being promoted. So either you've done an application for a patent. In a process of a patent, what happens is you do an application. Once there is an examiner, now they also talk about facilitators being put in place, but there will be an examiner who will examine your patent idea. Is that okay? And then he will give you a recognition number on the patent being submitted with them, the patent idea application being submitted with them. And if it has been in principle approved, in that case they get published in a journal of the Indian Patent Office. So that's the first step, after which there is more examination being done and to be able to test bug and see whether actually it is an innovation or creativity, a new something innovative idea which is getting patented, or is it something just run of the mill. So after that, it gets a couple of more years for examiner to be able to examine the R&D appropriately. But the first step is that once it is in principle approved, you get a publication in the Indian Patent Office. Once you've got that, you will be able to qualify under these conditions as well. Is that okay? So if you have the eligibility of an entity and if you have the letter of recommendations or support being provided from these institutions, then you qualify to be a startup. So if somebody had to come to you for an advice as to whether your entity can be a startup or not, you obviously need to look at these few indicators and then advise whether the entity will qualify to be a startup for you to help and go ahead and do further action and take a recommendation letter, etc. on.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So, the definition which has been given, like it should be
Sorry, which way are you? Yeah, okay.
the innovation part and all. But then there's sort of subjectivity there. Like, one, there may be many ambiguity. Like, when someone comes to me and asks like whether my idea qualifies as a startup, but then given these factors, still it is very difficult to analyze practically whether it would fall under the innovation category and all. So, like, what are your thoughts, like, how it go about?
This is not consulting assignment, right?
No.
So, no, unfortunately, and like you have to, there are very vague barometers which are being set for what could be a startup, because they say that it needs to be innovative. You can, for instance, if I have to start up a peer-to-peer lending platform, which is now very common in India as well. It's changed the way financial intermediation is being carried out. Any bank, you don't need to go to a bank anymore to be able to take money, borrow money. You can just go on to log on to a website and panel yourself as a borrower, make a requisition. They're crowdfunding. Keto organizations, these NGOs who are now crowdfunding. So this is an innovative idea, definitely. So some of these, of course, will outrightly get accepted as innovative ideas because they've not been spoken about. Some of these, of course, have a thin line of, there is a blurred line of trespassing into being an existing idea versus an innovative idea. But it needs to create a value addition. That's the core essence of an innovation or a product of commercialization. And of course, when we talk about these incubators and these accelerators and these agencies, the private equity funds, etc., they of course, out of their seasoning, out of their existence in the entrepreneurial stint, etc., would have some understanding of it. Of course, but there is no quantitative way of saying that yes, this will and beyond this will not be, because an idea is more like an art more than a science. An idea is just an idea, right? You cannot have a scientific way of quantifying what an idea could be. It could lead to something which is very good, it could lead to something which is completely bizarre under the sun, right? So then there can, at least for starters, we cannot have anything on a quantification side to say that yes, this beyond this we will not call it a startup. We may learn out of our experience and therefore have few more indicators to be put in place. But for the time being, it's more qualitative and more sensing that it is an innovative idea than to be able to say that yes, this will definitely be an innovative idea.
Qualified for the startup, you have to compulsory share your innovative idea to the government. What is the purpose of that?
So you're just sharing it with an incubator, etc. You will have an NDA clause that you will not, disclose my idea and that it will be a breach of copyright. Well, technically think of it like this. Even if I had to start up a taxi aggregator like Ola, can tomorrow you not come into the business and become more aggressive than me and broach on my existing market? So an idea can never remain very self-centered and focused to say कि मेरे अलावा तो कोई दुनिया में कर ही नहीं सकता है. तो फिर तो आप open and out आओगे ही ना. That is only possible when you want to do it secretly in your mind. If you want to come out in open, then anybody is going to poach on your ideas as well. So of course, and when you're trusting a mentor, you don't need to be with an incubator, right? You can always do it through a patent. You can always go to one of these entities and talk about your basic broader construct as well. Don't go into processes, etc. But when you're relying on a mentor, what is a mentor? It's like saying that if Krishna did not rely on, Arjun did not rely on Krishna, then there was no question of creating a teacher and a principal kind of a relationship. So then if you're choosing a mentor, then you'll have to place some bit of reliance. Of course, you can have your NDA clauses in place that you will not carry out a breach of trust, etc. Yes, there are questions.
I have an idea which has already been registered or in the process of registration by someone else. So
Please go ahead.
does this mean that I'm not able to?
We just discussed that what happens to the existing ideas we don't know. Like the FAQs still say that even if you're an existing idea and you want to register yourself as a startup, you still will be able to. But there's a question mark on the tax exemptions that may be available to you. We have to do it by trial and error to see even if we qualify.
Okay, how we can get to know that these are the ideas that will register on the process?
If it is a patented idea, you'll be able to see it in the publication. If it's not a patented idea, I don't think that's your worry. If there is something that you can patent, then there is a better way of going through patented ideas. But if there's already, let's say I and you have similar ideas, like bright minds think alike, and both of us went and approached the recommendation. So it's not my worry whether you are having the same idea or not, and neither it is your worry whether I'm having the same idea or not. As long as and they cannot disapprove your idea because it has already been created by someone else or is in pipeline. Because any which way there can be a possibility that I may not be a good entrepreneur and the idea may not reach anywhere, and you may do the right kind of R&D and you may reach the logical conclusion to the idea as well. So that cannot be. If the concern is that they will negate it because it's already an existing idea, if it is out in open, then of course it's no more an idea. If it's something that two of us are parallelly discussing with any of these institutions, then well, the question is they cannot negate the idea.
Whether details of the registered startups?
No, DIPP currently doesn't talk about any creation of a page or a portal where you will be able to see the registered startups. But of course through LLPs, because LLPs are registered with the registrar of LLPs and companies will be registered to the ROC, the registrar of companies, you will be able to get ID. If you want to find for a particular startup, you'll be able to. But there is nothing called a dedicated page where you will get to know these are the startups. No, there's nothing as of now from the government.
So there would be some centralization, I mean, these organizations, incubators or the colleges, I mean, there would be some defined list which would only provide this.
Yes.
So that there is no duplication of any such ideas, right?
No. So nobody is going to make your ideas public unless you are ready to go public with a commercial product. If you are incubated, for instance, if you come to me with a problem, I will not go and make it public, right? So if I'm coming with an idea to an incubator, I will be assigned a mentor because it's very, see, whenever there is an idea, it's not like it's very constructive in nature and on day 2 you can go to the market and start selling out, right? It's just purely an idea which needs to be developed, which needs to be tried and tested. You need to see, so you feel there will be a market for something, right? But suddenly you will realize there may not be a market at all, right? You think, let's say, online selling of one-liner t-shirts or online selling of t-shirts with innovative ideas could sell, or maybe like customized t-shirts could sell, but there may be no demand at all for that kind of an for a product at all. So that the idea is just not something which is tested already. It needs to be tested first, built in to see whether there is a demand and supply or not, whether I will be able to fund it or not. So it goes through lots of layers of tests before it actually can become something in the market for saying that yes, it is ready to be able to cater to the markets now. Is that okay? You will see a lot of these ideas which die in, if you see some of the statistics which I will also share with you, you will see most of these ideas die out in the first phase of their existence itself. And a lot of startups which have started the odd rounds of fundings which have not survived, even despite the fact that they have been very seasoned entrepreneurs and seasoned experienced people behind it, they had to shut down. For instance, a Zomato. Forget a Zomato, let me take a conventional example of a business, Nokia. I think if I had to negate the last 7 years of experience of Samsung and the Apples coming into the world and the smartphone culture becoming a wave, if the Nokia probably was listed as the #1 mobile company in India, at least if I don't have to talk about it globally. What is it that Nokia did wrong that the market size became completely zero and they had to retract themselves from the country? The idea wasn't wrong. The product was extremely good and very welcome by the general public as well, right? You relied on Nokia phones extremely. If you would have heard the last CEO speech of the Nokia enterprise while exiting India, they said that we did all that was right. I don't know where is it that we went wrong. It's just that they were not able to catch up to the new innovation that was taking place, right? So they had to shut down. So even a conventional business runs a risk of the fact that tomorrow you don't know whether it's going to exist or not, whether there's going to be a market for it or not. Of course, there were like what would they call luminous phones that came out, or some Lumia phones that came out, which was trying to replicate the smartphones as well. But that didn't create a market. It didn't sell well with the general public or the masses. So an idea can get poached by a more sophisticated idea, which is going to simplify your lives in a better way. Think of a case of a Zomato running into deep losses. If you would read papers today, you would see the Zomato is saying that I'm running into deep losses, I cannot run the business anymore. But it's gone and done acquisitions all across Spain and European countries, etc. And sometimes you will see small-time local likes of Zomato replications being created, which is only catering to your geographical location or a city that gets absorbed or acquired by Zomato as well. So you don't know at what stage your idea is going to become nothing at all. Is that okay? So sometimes you may have a demand, sometimes you may. So when we start with an idea, we cannot be thinking that there is somebody else who has an idea and therefore it will not get the recommendation letter from any of these institutes. Is that okay? So idea is something which is very vague. That I think if I do this, it will sell well and it will have a demand and supply being created and a market being created for itself. For instance, now SEBI is thinking of selling mutual funds on e-commerce platforms. Sounds pretty bizarre, right? You go and buy, let's say, a shirt on a Flipkart and you say, okay, let me also buy 5 units of Reliance mutual fund. Yeah, but then they're wanting to see test waters to see whether it is going to be facilitating, whether it is going to click as an idea or not. So it's just an idea which is out to become a product. Once it becomes a product, it has to go through lots of stages before it can actually come out in the open in the public for it to say, yes, there is a market that I'm creating now. Is that okay? Yeah.
What if one single individual has various ideas and if they all qualify as
Then you are a restless kind. Focus on one.
But will that person get certification for all of them? Will he
If
allow
they qualify, yes, why not?
same person with
Why not? I may be a genius. I may have 5 good ideas which will sell and create dynamic markets for themselves, then who stops me from getting all of them registered as startups? I'm not sure. The driver is not the tax exemption. The tax exemption will just come up. The incentives will just come up. The driver is the fact that they want to promote the ideas to progress. So there is a fuel that is missing for this engine. So they want to provide that fuel. You cannot be. ये उल्टा नहीं हो सकता. Fuel के पीछे engine नहीं लग सकता ना. Engine होगा तो fuel काम आएगा. Fuel हो के फिर engine तो नहीं ढूंढ सकते. It cannot be the other way around. You have to have an idea and they're wanting to promote the idea. So facilitation is around that idea. So if you have 5 ideas, they will want to promote all the 5 ideas. Somebody else has here.
Can it be said that the recommendation received from any of the specified institutions is a conclusive evidence of compliance with all conditions of startup?
It seems like for the time being, because DIPP is thinking of relying on any of these entities to be able to decide. Of course, DIPP itself doesn't have a machinery to think of a biotechnology a startup versus e-commerce startup versus a taxi aggregator. So it seems that they are placing reliance on seasoned people to be able to decide whether it should qualify to be a startup or not. And basis the certification they will actually give out.
So once later receipt, we can say it's innovative, we can see all the conditions are fulfilled, and then we can the startup can be discussed about this benefits to be taken for startup.
Yes, for 5 years, and if you don't cross the 25 crore limit, yes. So DIPP will confirm it that you're now eligible because you've got the recommendations and the other conditions have been satisfied, etc. Once they confirm, yes, on that particular aspect, there will be lesser ambiguity for the next 5 years on whether you will be able to claim benefits, grants, policy initiatives, etc.
Okay, one more question. For example, the company is eligible to be compliant with all conditions, and company has taken all the benefits for startup, patent and obviously registry for periodic medical. After 3 years, the turnover crossed 25 crore rupees. Now the question is that, what about the benefits which the company is already taken?
Will they be reversed? For instance, if for the first 3 years I've taken a tax exemption for myself,
Tax exemption is different story altogether. The tax exemption, income recovery can ask me back. But what about other benefits which may not be quantifiable, which may not be possible to give?
Currently, there is no answer to it, but yes, there is a high likelihood that it will get reversed. You will not remain a startup anymore. Of course, the government needs to come out with a clarification that cannot be the case. You can't be restricting my business here. I mean, like if I started as a zero entity and in the first year if I were to hit 25 crores, you should be happy. Then my entrepreneurial venture with your fuel has grown bigger. Now you're telling me that don't grow beyond 25 crores because if you grow beyond 25 crores, then I'm going to take away all the rights that you had when you enjoyed the benefits that you did actually. So it could not be the intention. Of course, it's not come to their eye as yet. But yes, from the current positioning, it seems like there is a high chance that this will get reversed. No, I think, no, there is no time limit being specified. They are wanting to set up an online portal within which they are going to do. I think the time for finishing the entire process is 21 to 35 days. But once you are ready, you should be able to go. Sooner the better, basically. So we just said, yeah, once you make an application, they're saying it will take you 21 to 35 days for the DIPP to clear the application process. No, the first is the certificate. Along with that certificate, you make the application to DIPP. Then least they will take is 21 days for them to certify you as a startup, and thereafter for you to pose it out to the world that I am a startup. Yes, they will confirm whether you are. Any of these. So they are all. Any of these, if you get, it should be okay. Right.
I started a business to see whether I can charter. I opened the web. I'm open to the web.
Right.
Now it is commercialized, very good. Then I go for the registration.
It's possible. Yes, it's possible. The sooner the better for you. But if you're wanting to, let's say 6 months after seasoning, you want to go, they're not going to stop you from it. As long as your 1st April post yeah, you can go whenever. You can go whenever. So, okay. Fair enough. All right. Okay, so park your horses for some time till I allow you to unleash them. So this is a complex chart. See, this is what art is for all professionals. They create everything complex for layman to believe that they need us. So this is one of the charts which tells you that they need you. So this is what, I don't know if it's very visible to you, and I don't know how to increase the font size. But it's basically saying the same thing, whether an entity has developed an innovative idea. If no, then straight not a startup. Is that okay? If it has, then move to the next question, whether it's a company or an LLP. If no, then move back, no startup. If yes, then move to the next question, whether the vintage is 5 years. If no, then again not a startup. If yes, move to next, which is 25 crores turnover. If yes, then in that case, whether you're working on commercialization of your product, process or a service. If yes, then whether you've got an approval from DIPP along with these. If yes, then you become a startup. Is that okay? Now let's talk a little about, before I move to the advantages, the policy initiatives and what the government has been doing and what all you may be able to claim and what new clarification notifications have been flowing in from all sorts of departments and regulators. Let's talk a little about facts and figures to be able to give you a perspective and sense on what's really happening in the startup space. Is it actually a wave, or is it really a bubble, or is it just like, a false mirage that has been illusion which has been created that it is going to be next big thing that is going to hit the country? So these facts will give you some perspective, and mind you, these are only facts, these are not my notions of what startup is. So currently, India is, and this is mostly 2015 report researchers that we've picked up from, where we're saying that India's position is third in terms of number of startups globally after USA and the UK. Fortunately, somewhere we've gone beyond China. Most of them as well. Okay, in 2015, India had a total of 4,200 startups, which is estimated to grow to 11,500 startups by 2020. As Chartered Accountants, you've done a mechanic on your mind of what is the cost-benefit analysis of doing consultation on the startup site as well. Please do note that it is going to go twice manifold in the next 5 years as well. The startup ecosystem has generated employment of 80 to 85,000 people, and the number is expected to raise up to 250,000 people in 2020. This, by the way, is one of the most important reasons why the government is also giving so much of emphasis on the policy initiative side. They want to allow entrepreneurs to grow and develop, also because it is creating employment, it is allowing more of FDI inflows to take place, it is allowing people, you will also see the brain drain is now getting reversed as well. So lots of pluses are coming out for the government to be able to promote the idea of doing more startups in the country. The industry was worth 5 billion in 2015 and has grown 125% since 2014. So in a single year, the growth in terms of the volumes of funding that have happened has grown by 125%. The FDI flow in the first half of 2015, pardon the miss out, attracted by startups was $31 billion, surpassing FDI in China and USA in that period as well, which technically means not just in India, we're also getting money from overseas for funding of these startups as well. More than 72% of the founders in the startup space are less than 25 years old. This should be, I think, not 25, but 35 old, making India home to the youngest entrepreneurs in the world. So the demographic dividend that we've been talking about continuously is now paying in this form as well. Bangalore is the 15th best city globally to start up according to the World Startup Non-Project ranking. Is that okay? So we, in terms of the ecosystem, we are getting funds from not just in India, we're getting it from outside India as well. In terms of the kind of demographic dividend that we could have encashed on, we are now encashing on it. In terms of creating an ecosystem, which is Bangalore now is being ranked 15th worldwide to be able to say is providing the best ecosystem, globally ranking ecosystems in the, for startups as well. And you would also see that the growth of number of startups has increased, which obviously means that now people are getting a sense of coming out and open with their innovative ideas and trying to commercialize them as well. India is home to 5.7% of the world's unicorn startups that have been valued at more than 1 billion. Unicorns in the startup jargon or in the VC space are technically those entities which have a valuation of more than 1 billion. So we house 5.7% of those unicorns globally. India's unicorns, of course, I've mentioned a few of them. In 2015, 850 startups received 9 billion worth of funding via 1005 deals. 17 finance companies received funding in 2015 over 290 million, making this one of the most funded sectors of the last year and also showing great promise. 11 companies in the B2C, which is business to commerce space, received funding at the tune of 3.37 billion, which is 33% of the existing total that we're talking about in the last year, which was, and also 50% of these were unicorns. Okay. Now, to be able to talk a little about concentricity of what startups are in India, what kind of areas the focus of startups currently is, there are 3 identified areas where startups are focused. One of them being e-commerce, consumer services, and aggregators. Is that okay? Now we're talking a little about futuristic idea as to say what is it that will make the startup wave continue for the timing. So industry reports suggest that the number of internet users in the country is going to go beyond 350 million, which is 50% year-on-year growth. So what is the objective that is coming out? More the industry, more the internet users, more the mobile application users. It makes it more technological friendly, which means more and more people will come as your identified market or identified consumers for the product or an innovative idea that you're coming out with. India has highest share of mobile-based e-commerce sales at 41% ahead of China and USA, which also says that now we've started using the brick and mortar system is now tremendously or drastically getting replaced by these e-commerce sites or e-tailing sites. In one of the comments made by the Niti Aayog chief, he also said by 2023, which is 2023, brick and mortar system may not exist anymore at all, which is far-fetched, but anyway, that's something that is also analytically coming through, that we may not literally need any more brick and mortar shops. It could be mostly by way of virtual interaction and virtual shopping experiences that we can have. The number of online shoppers is estimated to increase from 20 million in 2013 to 220 million in 2020, which is a whopping number to say the kind of virtual interface people will be enjoying over a period of time. Well, of course, there's some more figures, but what is also important to see is that in last 45 years, government gave out 19 bank licenses as against 23 payment bank licenses in one single year. Is that okay? Which also means that the regulators are now understanding that the digitalization wave that is coming by needs to be supported by the infrastructure as well. And therefore, it's a starking difference in the way the regulators are also promoting these kind of payment banks and mobile wallets, etc., to come to the foray as well. India has become the second largest geographic market for Uber with plans to invest 1 billion in Indian startups as well. So the taxi aggregator has been a biggie in the American framework, but now they're also thinking of India as one of the most promising markets as well, which also technically shows that we now, the consumers of the country have a kind of a receptibility or reception to this kind of a change or innovation that is coming by. And a little more on what some of these companies are growing, and the kind of sensitization that I'm trying to bring about is that the innovative ideas are now getting propelled. So it is probably the right time, in the middle of the wave, if there was any, to be able to create new startups and also to be able to get attached to these startups to provide any professional services that we can. This is a little bit of on sectoral distribution and what startups are. So if you would see, 90% of the startups are focused in Bangalore, Delhi, NCR, Bombay and Hyderabad region. And the rest of India is a very smaller cake of the entire pie of the entire cake. Then there's about a little bit on the investors in the startup volume and deal size. So this could be interesting. If you see, this is a little bit of a projection on India, China and the comparative countries as well. And they're trying to tell you how India is positioned among the various other countries which also have a startup sort of a wave running around them. And what is interesting to note is, to set up a business, India is probably the one which takes the maximum amount of time. Also talking about a lot about the ease of doing business in the country by the World Bank report, which now the Prime Minister quotes very often to be able to say that he wants to cut it down and bring it to the Singapore standards as well. See, the corporate tax rates again are also very similar in some of the jurisdictions like Singapore, which is ranked number 1 in ease of doing business. It is probably far lower. See the number of tax payments by the businesses. Please don't kill me. It is not my report. This is the bread and butter for all of us. But yes, that's the kind of number of tax payments that we're looking at. Bank lending rate again is very, very high as compared to the rest of the countries as well. Now this is what again is another projected story of how the startup culture is going to grow over a period of time. So they say that the total number of startups in 2005, let's say, was 10,000. And this I think is some Microsoft report, I don't recall. It is going to grow 10 times in 1 lakh by 2025. Similarly, if you would see what are the rationale, what are going to be the challenges for startups and what are going to be the driving factors, see exactly they're quoting the same thing, that increasing internet users, urbanization, increasing domestic consumption. These are going to be some of the driving factors for the startups to get propelled in the markets as well. And what are going to be some of the challenges that the startups are going to face is going to be stringent exit policies, ease of doing business, corruption, red tapeism, technological risks to talk about. Okay, so that's so much on what is the current space of startups, where is it that we are projected to grow, what is it that startup is going to be, and now in that entire background, what is the government really doing? Is that okay? So the government is doing quite a bit. For instance, the government's done something called a Startup Action Plan, which of course which was like the mother document, and that got replicated into various regulators coming out with notifications and clarifications. So the central government has issued Startup Action Plan, and I'm assuming the next speaker after me is also going to talk about the state government policy initiatives in the startup space as well. Lots of state governments have also come out with their policy initiatives. Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, you see Gujarat as well, are some of the states who've been wanting to create a facilitating environment for the startup ecosystem, not just the startups themselves. Now, SEBI, these are the norms and listing for these items. So, a startup will eventually have to become a conventional, traditional company, which will also have public offerings for funding, will go to IPOs, etc. So SEBI is allowed a kind of a carving out of a place in the institutional trading platforms for listing of the securities of these startups if they had to go public for raising funds. Then SIDBI set up an India Aspiration Fund, which is the fund of funds that even the budget spoke about, where the capital gains exemptions, if put into the fund, then therefore they will be exempt from the applicability or subjectivity of taxes. SIDBI has also set up something called a SIDBI Make in India Loan for Enterprises scheme, which is a SMILE scheme, basically promoting MSMEs to be able to get funds from banks, financial institutions through the SIDBI aiding. SEBI is also contemplating, I already mentioned that they are wanting to sell mutual funds on e-commerce platforms. DIPP is mapping several incubators on its site to allow startups to have access on incubators. Somebody mentioned, like for instance, if I was to come to Gujarat and I have a startup, I don't know where I should really go to find an incubator if IIM wasn't there. So DIPP is doing what? It's creating a sort of a kind of a directory which will say these are the startups in your area, these are the sectors that they focus on, and if you wanted to apply or become incubate in one of these startups, then you could actually have access to the DIPP site, which is now. So if you're setting up a private incubator as well, you should technically go to DIPP and have yourself mapped as one of the incubators for catering to a particular kind of startup segment. Okay, sorry, the font is going to be too small maybe for you to read it, but Startup Action Plan has several objectives that it stated out, and most of these have got materialized over a period of time as well. For instance, the idea is that there should be self-certification of compliances. Once if I've set up an entity, okay, imagine if I've set up a company, what are the kind of licenses, applications, registrations that I need? I need something called a trade license, I need a trademark, I need a shop and establishment, I need what else do I need? I need a VAT registration, if at all, a service tax registration, if at all. I need a TIN number, I need a PAN card. Wow, excise. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So you can just keep on naming and you can just keep on naming and going on. So they're saying that for these startups to just get away with the kind of multiple registration that you're looking at, you can just get into a self-certification mode for some of these laws. Not all, of course, but for some of these laws, you can give a self-certification. Like for environmental laws and labor laws, you can just self-certify, and they will not come for inspection, and for at least for 3 years, they will not inspect unless there is a specific case that is being registered with them against you. They will not come for inspections, etc. as well. They're also saying, of course, creation of a startup hub is basically saying that we'll bring together, create a kind of a network where at a single place you will be able to access the incubators, the accelerators, the equity funders, the mentors, everyone you can be able to access under a single portal or a single app. They're also saying for setting up a company, you don't actually need to run to a consultant side, but you could simply do it on the portal. They will try and integrate it with MCA's backend to just make an online application for registering a company. You can do the uploading of the documents online itself on the portal itself to be able to register yourself as a company as well. Other ways to, of course, come to us. Fast tracking of patents is very, very important. I actually dedicated a couple of slides post this to be able to say that how critical it is for us to understand that in India, patents are really not doing well, and there are facts and figures indicating that the machinery or the infrastructure to be able to cater to turning around patents quickly is not in place currently, when the government is giving clearly a lot of weightage on putting that machinery in place.
Sometimes it takes a year to register the patent.
Yeah, I thought when I read through, they said
Minimum year, I said.
5 to 7 years they take for a patent to move.
They are
And
not cooperating.
yes, and then there's times when only 10% of an application would move out of the entire application in a particular lot over a year-on-year basis. So yeah, it technically takes 7 years in a country to register a patent. By that time, I don't know, the innovative idea would have died and rusted. and that got buried itself.
This is only the reason why India is not progressing.
Well, that's a pinching ground for all of us. Let's not put on the press on a wrong tune for us to now start talking about lots of other things that is not okay. Especially when the budgetary session is on and there are lots of fiery discussions that are taking place between the two opponent, the opposition party and the party in India right now. Anyway, but back to the point. Government is also saying that in lots of cases when you have to bid for government tenders, they require you to have some bit of seasoning. So they said that it was being relaxed for MSMEs, they want to relax it for startups as well. So therefore, if you are wanting to make a tender application for a government proposal, you could do that because a startup is exempted from the seasoning requirements that they're talking about. And fast track exit provision, this is also very, very important. For instance, if I started a company and I had 4 or 5 ideas, like the lady here, and 3 out of the 4 ideas died. So the process of winding up, whether it is voluntary winding up or if I have to go to the fast track mechanism, it takes a lot of time. So even though I want to, and till the time you start a company, you have to continue with the compliances. You still need an auditor certificate, you still need a financial statement to prepare, you still need to do annual return filings, etc. So until you die your natural death, you have to continuously, religiously comply with the compliances as well, which becomes a huge taxing issue. I cannot move on to another company or another startup unless the first one has died its natural death. So the exit scheme has exit provisions in the country for an entity, either a corporate or LLP, have not been really very easy and swift. And now with the bankruptcy bill coming in place, they're wanting to make it very easy and swift as well. They say if you're a startup and you're like you're with a clean debt kind of a company, then within 90 days of your application of a voluntary winding up, we will wind you up as well, which means that the company will stop being in existence. Fortunately for us, unlike the GST, the bankruptcy bill has been passed by the Lok Sabha yesterday or day before. So therefore, this we will see the light of the day as well. And various tax benefits, of course, we will talk about this, and creation of fund of funds for investments in startups. So the government is doing what it's gone one step ahead. It's saying not only policy initiatives, now I'm also going to fund some of these startups as well. And how? This is how. The fund of funds and the credit guarantee schemes. So they say that the government is going to set up a fund of funds, and then through that fund of fund, they will create a fund which in turn will make an investment into startups. Why is there 2 layering being created? If directly, if I had to hold, let's say 20%, okay, this is a CA little question, just allow me to finish the point. If I was to hold 20% of equity in a particular company, what is my relation with the company? Okay. I become an associate. So I have invested, and for the company, I am an associate. Is that correct? So that's one of the significant influences criteria that benchmarking under, AS 18 it happens, right? Under AS 18, you become an associate. 23 is for consolidation. Okay, all right. So see, I stand corrected. AS 23, that they say that if you are holding 20% or more of an equity in an entity, you become an associate. So imagine if I start holding 20%, if the government were to start holding 20% in startups, they'll all become government entities. Yeah, so therefore the 2 layering has been created objectively to ensure that government invests in the fund and the fund therefore makes investments in the final entities. Is that okay? That's why it's called fund of funds. Fair enough?
Excuse me, madam.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Whether Mudra scheme cannot be utilized for this?
Mudra banks are only catering to, I think, EWS and below the poverty line.
No, it is not specific.
I thought it was for MSMEs and EWS and LIGs. Okay. So is there a categorical inclusion of startups? I'm assuming not, because it came long time before the startup policy initiative happened. It's focused on MSMEs and LIG, EWS, I know that. But I don't know if it's really to startups. Oh. So I don't know. I'm not very sure if it is applicable to startups as yet. I haven't checked in and I don't know. I don't have an idea.
But then, like to add,
Go ahead.
practically the challenges the startup they actually cannot repay the loans like immediately within 1 or 2 years of this time, or so that is why they go under the loan.
I don't know. No, so what happens is sometimes I also need a little bit of a liquidity crunch that I may have, working capital gaps that I may need to fill in. So I might still need, little bit of a working capital requirement will still be there. Equity is basically to be able to scale up, to be able to survive, lots of costs that I need to bear, which is called a burnout in the in the PVC jargon, they say that you need to burn out for a few years before you actually come to survival. But for liquidity crunches and working capital gaps, you still will need a little bit of funding and line of credit from banks to come by as well. But I'm not aware if under the Mudra scheme they've included startups.
Banks on a normal day, they are sanctioning the X amount of in the meanwhile, the entrepreneur gets an order to supply certain things which is to be manufactured within a year, within a month or 2 months time, and the amount required is higher than what the bank has sanctioned. In such circumstances, banks are not flexible.
So in such circumstances, they're coming out something which called factoring entities, trading platforms for factoring. Lots of bill discounting platforms are coming in.
But for a small entrepreneur, he is not in a position to effort to all factoring and
Yes, there is a question of awareness, of course. There is a question of the absence of awareness among small entrepreneurs. That's where they come to you as professional advisors, where you should mention. Now, NSC is wanting to set up a platform for all bill discounting of these small MSMEs. There are TREDS, which is trade receivables discounting or exchange platforms, which RBI has already licensed. 3 entities in principle approvals have been given out to start bill discounting platforms. There are lots of NBFCs which actually operate as factors, which will also be allowing you to take up advances, not just in India sales, specific sales, but export sales that you may be doing as well. So there is momentum. Of course, it's from 2012 the facilitating framework has been in place. I agree that MSMEs are currently not aware of the fact that they can avail of these facilities. But the question is of creating awareness, and therefore we need to be aware and then pass on the awareness among our clients. That's the only way I think it is going to pass on. But otherwise, RBI also understands this issue. Sometimes you need a promoter guarantee or a line before you get a line of credit, because banks generally don't want to lend out unless they have some sort of a net worth backing before a line of credit has been given out. So these kind of entities which let's say have advances or they have work orders which have been confirmed already, invoices which are good to go, they can get themselves discounted on these platforms, got them traded or trade with these e-commerce sites which also are now having an extension. For instance, a Capital Float or a Flipkart has a lending club, which in turn will allow you small time merchants to be able to discount their bills with them as well. So there is a machinery. Question is of creating awareness. That's still in place. Okay. So also there is a credit, back to the point, there is a credit guarantee scheme which has been set up by the government as well. This is for providing debt to startups. So under the SIDBI's aiding facilitation, they are saying banks and financial institutions should also provide debt to startups as well. Fast tracking of patents, I mentioned. You see the figures, they are very appalling in nature. It takes 5 to 7 years for a startup to set up. The number of startups, applications that have been put up before the patent offices is 15,621 in 2007 versus 4,126 in 2012 and 13. Right? So it takes, and 80% of these startups are actually from foreign entities. So it seems like Indian entities are actually given up on the fact that they can also register themselves for their patents. The fall in number of the patents is attributed to the fact that there is a lack of examiners. Like I mentioned probably 15-20 minutes back, that if you have to get your patent published in the Indian Patent Office, what happens is when you make an application, then there'll be an examiner who will give an in-principle approval. That's when it gets published in the patent gets published in the journal. The role of the examiner is to be able to examine whether the patent is for an innovative idea or not. Yeah. So for 15,000 patent registrations, if there are only 130 examiners existing, obviously it's going to take a lot of time for them to be able to approve such patents as well. Therefore, the government has increased the number of examiners as well, on contractual basis and actually on role basis as well. They've added a new area where you can also act as a facilitator, which means what, you can facilitate the entire process of application. In case of patents, they also allow that if you want to register yourself as a patent, but it is a chori ka patent, then they'll publish it in say that if there is an opposition that comes for the patent, then we will give the opposing party an opportunity of being heard whose patent exactly it is. Is that okay? So the facilitator can also act, present the case for the client before the opposing party as well, that it is genuinely my idea and it's not copied from somewhere, or it's not chori ka patent that I'm trying to register now. So that's the facilitation bit that the government has set up, somewhere you have mentioned. And also the government is saying that facilitation cost the government will bear for a registered startup. And in case your patent has to get published, then 80% of the patent filing fees, which is the only thing that you would have to pay, that also 80% rebate you will be given out on that. And if there is a patent that you're wanting to register in a cross-jurisdictional area, which can be done under the SIPP plan, again there the government is giving you a lot of facilitation and mechanism to be able to register cross-border patents as well. So again, there are lots of schemes which are being set up for the companies to register patents. Is there a question or? Sorry, is there a question? Another very emerging space in the startups or a carve out of the startups, if you're already not dead and you can still tolerate me. Yes, there's a question.
See, the question is कि आपने जैसे बताया कि let's say कि patent है, startup का patent है, वो speed से होगा, ठीक है? And in the registration phase, we have seen that let's say to get the startup certificate, you have to let's say patent अगर आपके पास है, so it is like let's say मुझे पहले patent करवाना है या पहले मुझे startup का certificate?
No, in principle patent का publication होना होगा. पेटेंट आने में तो आपको टाइम लगेगा, बट इन प्रिंसिपल द एग्जामिनर हैज टू से कि बात में दम है, उसकी पब्लिकेशन जब हो जाएगी पेटेंट इंडियन पेटेंट ऑफिस के जर्नल में, वो आप एज अ डॉक्यूमेंट्री एविडेंस पुट कर सकते हो. तो पूरा पेटेंट मतलब पूरा पेटेंट कंफर्म होना होगा ऐसा ज़रूरी नहीं है बिल्कुल. इन प्रिंसिपल कंफर्मेशन आ जाए कि आपके आइडिया में इनोवेशन है और दम है. ओके, सो बैक टू द पॉइंट दैट one of the critical niche areas that have come out of the startup domain, apart from these retailers and aggregators, is the P2P lending. What is a peer-to-peer lending, if somebody has an idea on it? Anyone in the audience? Okay, so so if I had to suppose take a loan, I'll go to a bank or an NBFC, which means I have to go to a bank branch and apply for a loan, right? If I'm a small-time entrepreneur, I may not even get a loan. Yeah, I may have to go to the Lalas of the world, to the usurious money lenders to be able to lend me. Yeah, so there can be either conventional banking channels, through which I may get money or may not get money, or there may be these small-time unconventional ways of getting money as well. So sometimes borrowers of sorts of a particular classification are unable to get funds from conventional sources of funding. Is that correct and true? So we do not have financial inclusion for all sorts of borrowers. So there is something called a platform and technological enabled platform which has been created, where borrowers and lenders come together to be able to meet the demands of funds. Is that okay? That is called peer-to-peer lending. And when it is done on a virtual platform, it's called peer-to-peer lending platform. Is that okay? So what happens is, if let's say I'm a high net worth individual, I want to diversify my portfolio, and I want to now start lending to people. Is that okay? Either I need to open an NBFC, or I need to invest my money into some sort of fund which in turn will be lending out to such schemes. I can now directly do it on such platforms. I'll register myself as a lender or an investor. I will have somebody else as a borrower who will raise a requisition that I need, let's say 10 lakh a working capital loan for a year, and this is my credentials. And if you like the credentials, then you can lend out that money through the platform to the borrower. Is that okay? So the need for physical intervention or a banking intermediation for lending is now being done away by something called a peer-to-peer lending platform. Is that okay? In very common parlance, it's called P2P lending. In India now there are 30 such P2P lending platforms which are doing business in several areas. I think China has some 40 odd thousand, and so of course these also lead to lots of frauds, and there are risks of lending to people unknown and unnamed with no credit underwriting being done. But in India the waves really picked up very hard. Of course this the innovation happened in the US, and in the US it is now an established way of lending and borrowing, apart from banks and in the financial institutions conventional channels as well. So unfortunately some of the countries have rejected the idea of doing P2Ps altogether. For instance, in Japan, in Israel, they not allow you to set up a P2P platform at all. In China, they've just recently had some $8 billion of fraud being created by a P2P platform, where they took money from the lenders by fictitious borrowers, and of course the money never went back. Are you reminded of the Saharas and the Shardas of the world? Yeah, some sorts of those. But yeah, So there have been 30 platforms that are in existence already, and there is no real regulatory mechanism that is in place. So RBI said, I will take it up, and RBI has set up a draft consultation paper as well for allowing P2Ps to be regulated in a particular way. Again, this is a very, very interesting area for CAs to be able to consult. Let me tell you why. Because these P2P platforms will be qualified as an NBFC. They'll be classified as an NBFC. And for the time being, not getting into the issue of whether it should be an NBFC or not. For instance, let's say it becomes an NBFC, then for or as auditors, as CAs, you'll have lots of things for advisory to come by, because there'll be capital regulation requirements, there'll be minimum capital that you need to maintain, there'll be leverage restrictions that you need to ensure. How many of us are actually consulting some of the NBFCs in the state or outside maybe? Okay, none of you. So then probably if there were P2Ps to come by, then there is also some part of it where we need to understand the NBFC regulations as well. And there is tremendous complexity on the RBI's regulatory side in NBFCs. For instance, they definitely need an auditor certificate all the time confirming that yes, this entity is an NBFC and it is of a particular classification, and that auditor certificate has to go with the auditor's report in each financial statement. And they also need to certify that the company is not taken in deposits, it's not a public deposit taking entity, and so on and so forth. So this is a very upcoming area in the startup domain, where if we had to start consulting, then there is lots and lots on the regulatory side, on the financial statements understanding side. For instance, there are certain threshold requirements that you need to meet if you're an NBFC on an ongoing basis. In the asset side and the income side, you need to ensure that these are being met. Is that okay? So the auditor is the one who's going to be confirming all of that. So this is one of the most upcoming areas of P2P regulations. Now talk about the tax exemptions. So of course this budget said that if you're an eligible startup, there will be certain tax exemptions that will be available. Now this is a complete mockery of the entire situation. They're saying that out of the 5 years, in 3 consecutive years, you can take tax exemptions. Is that correct? If I was a startup, in the first year, tell me what is the likelihood of the startup making profits? In the first couple of years, tell me what is the likelihood of making profits?
0 to 10%.
Absolutely. So it will be very few startups who will get any benefit out of this, because in the first 5 years, out of the first 5 years, the first couple of years are any which way the company is making losses. The company is not started to make any profits as such. Is that correct? Therefore, the fact that I will be able to gain tax exemption for profits which do not even exist is just giving you like a make-believe in life. Maybe, yes. So like we said, the number...
One more thing is, that means that the commercial thing, it is working. Because if I don't make profits, it's not commercially viable, then it's better to shut down and not make
So sometimes the R&D is also...
That can be a reason behind.
Fair enough. So sometimes R&D takes a lot of time as well for commercialization to happen. So that I'm making losses and my product has not got scalability, that may not necessarily mean that I'm not commercial as yet. But yes, they've restricted the framework to say turnover within 25 crores, don't go beyond that. And you need to obviously start making profits as well. Yeah, go ahead.
It can be that in the first 2 years there will be loss, but third, fourth and fifth year there will be profit.
Then you will be able to claim.
There will be in the first 2 years.
No. It doesn't say the first 3 years, thankfully. We would have rejected the wisdom of the government in totality. So you were saying something?
Once you start, then the limit happens.
Yes, once you start, then it's the same like in case of power generation entities under section 40 something of the Income Tax Act, where if you are a power generating entity, then out of 15 years you are able to claim 5 years of tax exemption. Yeah, ATI benefit. Yeah, so a lot of power companies are using that benefit. Is it 5 out of 15 years or 10 out of 15? 10 out of 15. See?
Can I use the platform of other manufacturers to produce my product, even the innovative product?
Who's claiming the benefit?
Suppose I am existing manufacturing unit. I have some new idea, new production process. I get it registered with the startup and get it manufactured with that existing
So it's very counterintuitive. See, you're saying you have a new idea, but you're getting it manufactured from an existing entity. Then therefore it is not a new idea. But you're not using that patented process. Very counterintuitive. Why in the first place would you create a patent?
On a job mark, maybe he gets the product.
Job work is a different thing, but I'm still making use of the innovative patent that I have got registered as well, right? If I'm not making use of it, you still got the registration, well, you may still use the benefit. See, if that would have been a case, then, okay, I'll tell you a classic example. Before the Olas and the Ubers came in, there was something called a Meru in existence. You would call a Meru to be able to call a cab. Why is it that Meru's died down in terms of the market space that it is enjoying? Versus the Ola, in relativity. I'm not saying they've died down in business completely, in relativity. Technology driven, that means technically that there is something that is coming out of the technological convenience. So if you first thought of it, you racked your brains, you titillated your brain cells to come out with a patented innovative idea, and therefore you decided to park it. It's the same as saying that you don't want to come out in open, somebody else will steal your idea, and therefore it remains in my mind. Fair enough, if you are able to do that, get out of the jugglery, still have a patented idea, and therefore continue to be in the same process, you still are able to claim the benefit. Fair enough. Okay. They also say the profits of the startups will be subject to MAT even though you will be able to claim the tax exemptions. And yes, they again repeat the idea that again it needs to have an interministerial board certification. We call the first couple of slides that we spoke about, recommendations from here, there, everywhere. And also that it needs to be an innovative product which needs to come out in open, not in my brain, and needs to be put to use as well sometimes. Yeah, 54 GB. You all already know the section that in case if there's a residential property which is being sold and there is capital gain coming out of it, and then you've made that investment into new assets, therefore you're exempted from the capital gains. Now this, instead of new assets, if that capital gain is invested into equity of a startup, which in turn is investing in new assets, even then the 54 GB exemption will be available to that entity. Is that okay? They are aggregators. Fair enough. So their patenting or innovation was on the aggregation side of running the platform where they're aggregating people who need to hire cabs versus people who have cabs as well, right? For instance, a Book My Buy. I don't know if you know of this platform where there are 4,000 buys listed and women can actually go and book a buy as well, right? It's probably got first round of funding as well. It's very prominent in the Delhi NCR region. Book a plumber. So they're all becoming aggregators of the world. What are they doing? They're telling you in one single place you will be able to see all what is available, and instead of running around helter-skelter, you can simply go on their website and so they are not giving you any product, but they're giving you a process which is going to be making your life more simple by way of using a technological platform. Is that okay? So you need not create a new product, but that same product can be enhanced or made to penetrate the markets in a more effective way. You still are an innovator, right? Yes, go ahead.
New product, new service, now suppose the product is imported in India and traded in India, but eligible entity is going to start that manufacturing unit in India for that existing. Then will it qualify for a...
No, it's not just geography specific that innovation needs to be limited to the country. If it's already there, then you're just replicating what is there outside the country. For instance, in Israel, they have a technology. In India, if you have tomatoes ripe on a field, they cannot stay for more than 4 days. In Israel, they have a technology where it can stay for 4 months. Is that okay? So you have to bring the technology into India. You're not doing any innovation. You're just getting an existing technology into the country. Is that okay? And I also have very limited time. Let me just run past the slides, and then we'll do some brain titillation with all your jugaad questions that you may have. Okay, some of these exemptions again there are available. That what was being available to venture capital funds on the 56(7)(b), which is again valuation of shares of an entity. If beyond a particular fair value you're paying for the share price, then whatever is the capital gain has been exempted. The exemption was there for AIFs and venture funds. Now it has been extended to startups as well. In case if you have capital gains and you're investing in a particular fund which has been established by the government, in that case that gain is being exempted from taxes as well. I'll just skip through e-commerce because then I have to talk about lots of things. I've already mentioned that if you have to house a business, this is one of the most important questions that we need to answer, whether it needs to be sole proprietorship or partnership, LLP or a company. It could be any of these, but if we need to be a startup qualifying under the DIPP norms, then it needs to be necessarily a company, a private limited company, an LP or a registered firm. And if we need to gain the tax exemptions, the finance bill 2016 in its original form only said private limited companies. It's only now when the bill has become an act, the LLP has been added. So some good fellow has put the government wise on that at least. And of course the policy initiatives that are now getting panned out. This is again putting down some of the comparatives on a private limited company and an LLP in case you had to set up, somebody had to ask you what should I do? Whether should I set up a LLP or a company, because both will qualify. What are the pros and cons of each of these? So this is again an area where you need to advise them which would be a better entity to incorporate to house the business as well. Okay, I'll skip through funding side. I'll just come to role of CAs because that's what is for the next. You've tolerated me for 2 hours to be able to hear that. Okay. What are the services that you can offer to startups and to the startup ecosystem as well? You could do the registration of the company, which is or the LLP. You could do the regulatory side compliances, which is general filing, annual filings. Please leave something for us as well. Believe in tie-ups. See, so there has to be a CS within me, which has to somewhere come out and also say that don't take up our space. Believe in mutual coexistence as well. But yeah, you could do that, and we could offer some CS services as well, which we are clearly offering as well. Okay, so like we mentioned already, some of the registrations that we can do are VAT, PAN, TAN, service tax, a P tax, which is a professional tax, a trade license, a trademark, and several of these registrations you can of course get them through. Tax consultation is whether if I'm making an equity investment, in how much time it has to exit, whether there will be a valuation required, what is the premium, how will the premium be accounted for. If I'm investing in a warrant which will be convertible into an equity, how will it come in my books of accounts, what is the tax implication. If I'm doing a preference share, then whether it is a redeemable or a convertible preference share, each of these instruments, their tax implications, and so on and so forth. Likewise, accounting as well, how do I account for several transactions? If I'm doing it, again, on the taxation side, not just the direct taxation, even the indirect taxation. For instance, Flipkart had this huge issue with the Kerala High Court where the VAT authority said that everything that you're buying needs to be under VAT. They said, I'm only an aggregator, I'm paying to the, if I'm buying something, then I'm paying to the merchant which is under interstate sales. It cannot be intrastate because Kerala VAT authorities decide that all the revenue should be directed to them from Flipkart and therefore we should, so Kerala High Court says this is all whimsical and fancy and dismiss the whole litigation. So they need, these kind of institutions, startups will need a lot of advisory on the direct and indirect taxation applicability. Is that particular transaction applicable to service tax? There is reverse charges. I am flaunting now that I also know a little bit of service tax, indirect taxation. But yeah.
Recently, there is a move about imposing entry tax on the e-commerce.
Is there?
Some of the states are...
Will they reduce 1% VAT and say I now introduce entry tax?
In addition to it.
Oh.
Some of the states are thinking...
Wouldn't this go away if GST was to come? It would, right? It's expectedly supposed to.
So far, not known.
If I was in Bengal, I would have also done a little bit of political promotion and said vote for BJP, but the state, I don't need to do that. But yeah, hopefully if GST had to come in some time from now, these kind of issues will get resolved. Hopefully. You could also, with a lot of pain in my heart and a mini heart attack, I should say that there can be secretarial matters also you can address. And more of assistance you can do on the filing and compliances, basically VAT returns, tax returns, IT returns, annual returns, all sorts of returns that you can think of, all filing compliances that you, excise returns, SENVET credits, all of that you can do. Business plan preparation, please do pay attention for 5 seconds on this. If you are preparing a business plan, which is what you technically do for any business idea to be projected and say that I've prepared the financial projections as well, there is one very critical section you should remember, and there is section 36 in the Companies Act 2013 which has been introduced, which says that if a bank was to make a claim that the financial projections prepared by any person, including a professional, had induced him to lend, and the projections were false or misleading in nature, then they had the right to be able to take fraudulent action against you under section 447, which is also sending you to jail, which is imprisonment. So please ensure that your disclaimers are in place to avoid the applicability of section 36 of the Companies Act. Prepare financial projections with utmost research and utmost diligence without having to apply any jugaad technology. So that's the finance business plan and the projections, basically the pure analysis and the projections of the cash flow that may take place. Options for financing available. Yeah, this is again important, like we were just discussing the other time, that there is an advance that has come which is much larger than the line of business, the line of credit that I have from banks. What does my client do? So now go and start factoring your advances with either these platforms or these NBFC factors as well. If you don't have much of a domain knowledge, I still will be available. You have my email IDs on the PPT on the first page of this PPT slide. Then you have other options as well. What should you do? What are the modes in which you should do funding? Basically, when should we get equity? When should we get preference shares? When should we get mesh debt? When is it that we should have private equity investors coming in? At what value they should come in? All of these are the areas which will be our clearly niche areas for chartered accountants to advise on. For instance, should I first have preference share, or immediately should I get an equity investment from a private equity investor? What is going to make a lot of sense? So these kind of advisories mixed with my business, the objective my business will have, the scalability of the business, the prospects of another investors coming into my entity, and therefore what is it that I'm protecting my interest of the promoter of the business as well, to ensure that how much should come as an investment, in what form it should come in an investment, and what should be the tax implications on the investors and on the promoters as well, in case if the exit was to happen from that entity as well. Some of the niche areas where startups can, chartered accountants can provide advisory on. Service, again, regulatory assistance. The exit of the business, again, if the business is not doing well, then you can allow for the voluntary winding up applications to happen, or fast track exit schemes that ROC promotes these days. You could do one of those as well. Services to investors can include on the valuation of the business. When I'm making an investment, I need to value the business as well, of the promoter whose business, in whose business I am going to be making it. How do I value the business? For instance, there was SBI said brand collateralization of Kingfisher at a particular valuation, gave out loans which were bizarre in numbers, and I need to count on my fingers how many zeros to add on that as well. But now when they've enforced the brand, right? And they're unable to find takers for the brand as well. I'm sure you all are reading on papers. So what is the value of the brand anymore? Right? So technically means for the entire consortium, the lending of 9,000 whooping crores is an unsecured lending to somebody. Is that correct? So you don't want to do something like that for your investors. Therefore, valuing the business, existing peer analysis, valuing basis their valuations, their scale of business, our scale of business, their positioning, our positioning, and therefore what is the right value of the business in which I should be making equity investments will be very critical for an investor to understand. And not all investors in the PE area will be seasoned investors. A lot of these HNIs who have a lot of money, they don't know what to do with, they will be making investments through these angel networks. It happens. These angel chapters of all these states, they come together as basically a lot of HNIs coming together saying that I now want to invest in a startup domain rather than investing in a cliched traditional business platform. Right? So then assisting them on their tax implications of investments and how much the valuation will come by will be important. Incubators and accelerators, I already mentioned when we started, we can give lots of services on the admin side, operational side, bookkeeping side, taxation side, filing side. So the prospects are humongous. I don't know if I've been able to sell the idea to you as yet. And with the closing remark, I just said that the ocean is blue. They say that whenever there is an untapped virgin market, they say it's a blue ocean. And before I grab it, it is open for everybody else to grab. If there are questions now, I will entertain, or in the interest of time, how should we go about it? 3 more questions? Okay. Okay, the crowd's heard me enough. 2 hands, okay, go ahead please. Or it will still apply. Same provision. MAT is for companies, LLPs के लिए AMT will also apply. You had a question, sir? I'm sorry, you are not inaudible. Yeah, startup के. ये हम डिस्कस किए कि DIPP के लिए आप फिर भी अभी कर सकते हो, क्योंकि वो FAQ में ऐसा वेग लैंग्वेज में लिखा है कि एग्जिस्टिंगली भी कर सकते हैं. फॉर टैक्स बेनिफिट्स के लिए आपको एंटिटी आफ्टर इनकॉर्पोरेटेड आपको 1 अप्रैल होगा तो ही आपको टैक्स बेनिफिट्स मिलेगा, पर बाकी बेनिफिट्स में अभी आप DIPP में ट्राई कर सकते हो. कंपनी इनकॉर्पोरेट कब हुई थी सर? या when was the company incorporated? It is now going to be. Then you can change. Yeah, what is the problem? So there is an existing idea you're working on. You've not housed it anywhere. You've not started working on it, the company is not incorporated before 1st April 2006, then it's fine. You can make an application to DIPP and also get tax benefits as well. Yes, somebody had, that's the last question we will take. Yes.
If the company is incorporated in 2015 and the idea is just being in the market in 2016, will it qualify for the
How's it in another company? No. The fellow gentleman here will help you on that. How's it in another company? Yeah? All right. Thank you so much.